Today's blog on the street topic, stop and search.
Did you tell him that he doesn't have to give his name? Did you tell him he doesn't have to give you his name?
No. To do his work, just get out of the way.
Today we will be discussing stop and search with the CEO of RootAware, highlighting the good, the bad, and how technology can aid the police force. I will provide you with a short scenario, and then I want you to think about what you would do if you were in the same situation. You are a police officer on duty in Islington. You notice a group of 4 young black males standing outside Angel Tube Station. Hoodies, tracksuit bottoms, one trouser leg rolled up, the usual. Out of the corner of your eye, you see it. Subtle at first, and then it becomes clearer. A slight distortion in the clothing and the startled look that one young man is giving you. Your gut instincts tell you that he's hiding something, but can you be sure? Noticing you, he turns to talk to his friends, and they all start walking off in the opposite direction. Watching them walk away with increasing speed, you call out to your colleague. They turn down the next corner whilst throwing glances in your direction over their shoulder. The years you have spent working as a police officer tell you to stop them, that they're acting suspicious, yet you hesitate. What if it was just imagined? What if the search results in a negative outcome? Mentally running through pieces of legislation in this morning's briefing provides a stark reminder that you can't really afford to have too many negative results. With the oath you took to serve and protect, infringing on your thoughts you decide to pursue. The group of young men notice and they start running, so you run too. This act almost confirms your initial suspicions. You have nothing to hide. Why would you run?
So why would you run? Well, no one likes the police. That's why you would run. What do you think?
Okay, well, going back to when I was policing, I had a mixture of both, to be honest with you. I did have the whole come in, have a cup of tea. Yeah, and of course, we had the ones who did run, and sometimes they had something, sometimes they didn't.
Mhm.
You also have the other sinister side of it, it's like that they do run because they are hiding something and they are
Mhm.
hiding drugs or they are hiding a knife. But I remember there was always the pressure. I always felt the pressure that I didn't want to have a negative outcome
Mm.
because I remember we had to fill out these little slips of paper with all our grounds, and
50-90s. Yeah.
you had to try and fit in all your grounds in the space of like 3 or 4 like lines. And this is going to be like the whole justification of why this stop was completely necessary and how
Yeah.
you had gathered all this evidence, and and in that you have to add their description
Mhm.
and their ethnicity and
Mhm.
the reasons and where, and it's such a tiny piece of paper.
Yeah. Yeah.
and and it's all fine if you find something,
Yeah.
but if you don't find something, then yeah, that
Yeah.
piece of paper becomes very important all of a sudden, right?
Yeah. No, totally. All is forgiven when you actually manage to get a positive outcome. That's what it's called, isn't it? Outcome
Yeah.
code 1, from my recollection. And
Mhm.
you get told from a tactical perspective or like policing perspective in terms of professionalism. The whole purpose behind stop and search is to kind of enable officers to allay or confirm suspicions about
Mhm.
said individuals without obviously arresting them, because that's a different ball game. So before arrest, you conduct these searches to actually confirm or deny your suspicions, and suspicions are just come in many different forms. You go back to training, you go back to gut instinct, you go back to situations that you're in. The situation that you described is you look at someone, you look at a group of people, without stereotyping, but everyone does. Everyone kind of forms a bias anyway, conscious or unconscious. Unconscious is better than conscious because then you're not actually actively stereotyping. But you look at your training, you think, okay, well, what can I do here? Let's look at the powers available to me. So I've got the very basic. You got a section 1 of PACE 1984, and you've got like a section 23, misuse of drugs, and but both of those allow you to search people, whilst
Mhm.
you set up reasonable grounds. But it
But
doesn't.
I
It's
think
not as easy as
there's
that.
but I think in terms of public perception,
Mm.
sometimes it gets misunderstood where people think that you're stopping and searching someone in a preventative manner. It's like you're trying to prevent crimes. That's
Mm.
why you're stopping and searching. But it's not. It's actually more a responsive, like it's a reactive action you're taking because you
Yeah.
need to have these reasonable grounds to begin with to
Mhm.
even conduct the search.
Mhm.
So it's not as simple as oh, we're targeting this area, we're just going to stop and search everybody who comes across because that's just the area we're targeting. We're not allowed to do that. And I think a lot of people don't realize that actually you can only stop and search someone if you have reasonable grounds
Mm.
or you suspect them. And it's
Yeah.
to confirm, as you said earlier, is to confirm your suspicions rather than to prevent crime and, just in a particular area. So you can't just stop and search people.
Well, I guess if you put
But do people do that?
yeah, of course they do.
Do they
Of
still?
course they do. Absolutely. The thing is, you're never going to take the human element out of stop and search, right? And the human element comes from experience. There is no way that you're just going to be a police officer and, as you said, there's a tiny bit of paper that you can write a little bit on about your reasonable grounds, right? But your reasonable grounds are based on your experience. You get taught and trained to look for certain things. You know, if there is a large group and they are passing little shiny objects, or based on the intelligence around the area, it's been known for knife crime or the smell of drugs or whatever it may mean. But you as a police officer are still a person. And from a personal perspective, you've had experiences with that group of people, or the way that someone looks, whether they're wearing a hoodie or whether they're somewhere down a dark alley, or they look at you in a really shifty way, and you inform the basis of your grounds from that. But I think other people don't just inform it, they just use it as their grounds. They use their experiences that they've had and they just jump the gun because they don't get it. They just don't get what Section 1 actually says, first of all. They don't get what grounds means. They don't get that there is unconscious bias. They don't understand all of that. And as you said, we get lucky a lot. And to be quite frank, over the last 10 years, we haven't got as lucky. It's a skill. It's a skill to be a police officer. It's a skill to be able to use that gut instinct and justify it through relevant searching powers under PACE or misuse of drugs. It's a skill to go into a certain area and diffuse it, or it's a skill to basically ask some questions and then build grounds. All of this is a skill, and I think that the big thing that we're missing out on is building up that skill, because we've changed policing now so much so that it's not seen as a vocation or a skill, and the grey areas that takes time to build up, the confidence, the communication skills, the understanding of like the crime cycle, and the experience gained from other officers. Because again, I questioned it, rightly so sometimes, and sometimes I said I'm not searching this person because I don't think I've got grounds. It's only gonna get worse. The relationships created by that group of yous that you talked about, they're running, and again, you would just run after them, rightly or wrongly. You just chase, right? And now people don't even chase. Have you seen the size of these people? Some of them coming into the job. My God.
Hey, listen. Some of us don't like cardio.
No,
I'm one of those people. I
it
don't like
doesn't-
cardio.
Listen, right? There's three distances you need to concentrate on, right? There's 20 meters, 100 meters, and 400 meters. If you don't catch someone in 20 meters, you're gonna have to try and catch them in 100. If you don't catch them in 100, you're gonna have to try and catch them in 400. So my tip to anyone is get that 20-meter sprint. Get it done. You don't need to like cardio. You just need to sprint for 20 meters. Tops 100 meters. Because if you don't, that person is long gone, right? And
So let's touch on that, the sort of racial biasness then,
I
because
thought you'd go for that.
have
Pull that card out.
because we were talking about how, a certain group of youths, and why is it always a youth? Maybe the biggest drug dealers out there, the ones carrying weapons, aren't youths. Maybe they're in
Of
their,
course they're not.
I don't know, mid-40s, and they're wearing suits and they're walking
Absolutely.
down, Covent Garden in broad daylight, and
Yep.
nobody ever stops to check them.
Uh-huh.
So why? Like, maybe if the youths just dress better, is that what we're trying to say? Then they wouldn't get stopped and searched so much?
Yeah.
Give them
yeah,
a
they would.
suit.
They would.
Pop to Primani, get yourself a suit, get yourself
100%.
some nice shoes,
100%.
and then you won't get stopped and searched.
What you're looking for is these little utes in hoodies. What you're looking for is them not being at school. What you're looking for is, well, why are they looking at me as a police officer? Normal members of the public might give you a glance, especially if there's more than two of you about, because they're thinking something's happened, right? And if not, they'll just walk on because they're not scared of you. Whereas if you are just huddled around in a little group of meerkats, kind of like pricking your head up, looking left and right and thinking, what's this copper looking at? Well, as soon as you think that, then we're going to look at you and go, well, what are you looking at? What are you up to? And then we approach, and then, as you said, they starburst, and that's it. Either chase or lose, or both. But the racial thing you're talking about is, being in London, there's many different races, many different faces, and a lot of people or police officers don't have that training or knowledge. Not every police officer is from London or those inner city areas where I'm from North London, Tottenham and Enfield. So all day, every day. And
I just want to take a quick pause here, whilst JP's going off on a tangent about where he's from, and it's pretty boring to be honest. I want you to think about what your ideal police force would look like. Do you think it matters where a police officer is from? And would promoting diversity within the police force make any real difference to policing? We rejoin the conversation now, where we discuss what police officers are looking for and how machine learning can make a difference to policing.
Say, for example, there's a group of men, or maybe a mixed gender, a group of young men and women who are out, in Canary Wharf, they're having some food or drinks or whatever,
Yeah.
and they're passing cocaine around
Yeah.
between them,
Yeah.
right?
Happens,
But
of
no
course.
one's looking, but nobody's looking at them because we're not trained to look at them,
Yeah.
because we're looking for the use. So where is that skill that you're saying? We're saying we've got this skill, and it's something that we can pick out and we can identify, we can find these reasonable grounds, but actually we're only finding it in one kind of demographic.
Low
We're only
hanging
looking for it.
fruit, Stels.
We're only looking for it in one demographic,
Of course.
right?
Low hanging fruit, right? Again, if you're trying to train a large number of people, the easiest thing to do is get them to do the easiest job, right? And then build up that confidence. I'm not saying that's the best way, and in fact, that's quite the opposite, because you're not actually teaching them how to be the best cop, how to be the best investigator, how to really conduct these quick psychological assessments. But it's low hanging fruit, and unfortunately, low hanging fruit when it comes down to people comes down to the really deprived areas, especially in London. In London, it's a strange mix, because you have on one end of the street, or one half of the street, a really, really terrible shithole, right? Horrible estate, full of drugs, full of violence, full of all sorts of nonsense that these people are being faced with every day. Literally, on the opposite side, we'll talk about this, Islington, you have £1.5 million flats, not even full houses, like an old terrace house, middle terrace house, Edwardian or Victorian terrace house, and broken up to 4 flats, each of them worth 1.5 mil. On the other side, and it feels like the clouds are cast badly on that way. They just don't have that same opportunity. But what we're going to do is we're not going to look at those nice houses, because, as you said, we're not trained to. What we're going to do is look at the other group who are collected or gathered in that one spot, and one of them's bound to be slow, one of them's bound to have drugs, one of them's bound to have a knife. So let's just target them, because it's easy, really, really easy. And that's what you get taught and trained to do. Sad, isn't it? If you really break down prejudice, a lot of people do have a certain prejudice against a certain type, or a certain gender, or a certain type of protected characteristic. Sorry, if you arrest 10 people and 9 out of those are black and Asians, your view of crime will be based on, 9 out of 10 people I've arrested are black and Asian, so therefore 9 out of 10 people committing crime are black and Asians. And you're only going to compound the same thing. So if you look at, you watch YouTube videos, you watch any kind of videos, or look at social media, it only comes back with the stuff that you want to see, isn't it? It's the algorithm. So if you base everything on an algorithm in terms of computer-wise, it's only going to spit back out what you want to see. And exactly the same way of policing, exactly the same way of stop and search. You stop 10 black youths, half of those have knives and drugs, then all you're going to be doing is, I've got a 50% chance of nicking someone for drugs and knives, especially if they're black. So all I'm going to do is look at black people.
Following on from that, I just want to talk about some of the figures and the statistics that have come out recently since COVID and lockdown, which is, I was really surprised about the fact that there's been an increase of 40% of stop and searches during COVID. Now, forgive my ignorance. I thought everybody was meant to be locked down. I thought you guys were all meant to be stuck in your house. I don't really know this increase in searches have come from. You know, when people are on the street, we're obviously not searching them or we're too scared. And then now people aren't on the street, so is everybody now a target? And out
No.
and of all the searches that were carried out,
Hmm.
only 21% of the searches resulted in police action,
Uh huh.
such as a warning or
Mhm.
fine or arrest,
Yeah.
you know. So that's such a low percentage. Now, I remember when I was policing, I would have had a mini heart attack if that were my figures. That only 20% of my search results, or had some sort of outcome. I would have been freaking out. That is my job going to be on the line? Am I going to
Yeah.
be pulled in for questioning or
Yeah.
something along those lines? But these are statistics across across the sort of force in general. One of the questions we asked, in our blog, it was, are current stop searches intelligence led?
No.
Are they the ones that especially now with COVID, like,
Well,
what's happening?
well, with COVID, I guess it's a different ball game, right? Because as you said, if we're on lockdown in various areas, then it can only be intelligence led because you're not supposed to be out. So therefore, we can at least, at a very, very least, engage with someone outside and speak to them and go, well, hello, sir, madam, what are you up to today? Aren't you supposed to be indoors? If you're not indoors, then what's the reason? And it could be shopping, it could be visiting friends, it could be just, I just want to get out. Or is it the other option of, are they out there because they're committing crime? And not all crimes refer just back to, prohibited articles or items relating to theft or drugs. Sure, there might be some of those things on them, or they might just go and commit those offences. Um, but the training hasn't changed. The same principles we've talked about hasn't changed. We haven't developed, you know, more of an understanding of stop and search through this time. In fact, we're still in the same. We're still in the same place. We're still making assumptions. We're still
Hmm.
being biased. We're still using our experiences. So why is this little black boy in Brent walking around, with his little hoodie? What's he up to? It might just be he's up for a walk. It might be the crime element. But I know which option the copper's going to think. They're going to think he's up to no good. So I'm going to stop and speak to him. Ultimately, he's going to stop and search him, regardless of what he says, and it would just happen, and it will happen time and time again.
And still, black males are statistically 9 times more likely to be stopped.
Of course they are.
So, despite the protests and sort of awareness being raised, and all the political media, social media, everything, discussions around it,
Hmm.
it hasn't actually made a difference from the sounds of things.
Why
So
would it?
have you seen, well, I was going to ask you, have you seen a shift in any of the narratives through work around since the Black Lives Matter protests have started? Have there been any discussions about how to conduct better policing, I guess, or improving on whatever the system is now?
There has been ongoing conversations, yeah, of course there has, but you know, like there's two ways of looking at it. First way is you can talk about it all you like. It's a great thing. It's a great conversation to have. Have a really good open debate. Have different people from different backgrounds sit down and have like a proper group session where you can raise the issues and look to tackle anything that you want to tackle out of those issues. But ultimately, the second option is do something about it. Talking only gets you more conversations. And I've seen a lot of talking, I just haven't seen a lot of action. They just take it on to go, Black Lives Matter, so therefore, what we're going to do is just stop searching black people? Well, no, that's not right. I mean, you don't stop searching anyone in particular, but irrespective of their ethnic background, you search based on intelligence. But there hasn't been an increase in teaching people to look at intelligence sources. There hasn't been an active way of training people to get them to understand about what makes something suspicious. It's been exactly the same. So it just
Okay.
because the conversations happened, they haven't changed anything out of that, and that's why it's going to still be the same. It's not going
Hmm.
to change because officers aren't going to change. BAMEs don't want to come into the police for whatever reason. Well, I'm here, you were there. Co-founder of this company's here, and plenty of my friends, from various backgrounds, including BAME backgrounds, are in the police. But
Hmm.
what can you do? If someone doesn't want to come in, you can't force them to, and if they're going to have a negative view, even if I search them, they're going to have a negative view. What do you do? So it's a kind of no-win scenario, isn't it? There isn't a respect level. You know, they keep on talking about having these liaisons with community members or community leaders, and they have that, but they don't represent the community, really. They only represent them, or they're part of whatever that community leader's about, whether it's religion or some other faith, or, you know, they're looking at a certain age group. That's what they represent. They don't represent everyone. And if you really break it down, people don't want to engage. Like, what does engaging with the police mean? Oh, well, either you're talking to the police, you're snitching, or, you know, you're talking to the police, I'm going to get in trouble, or they don't see police officers as normal members of the public, which we are, as you said, you know, policing by consent. But people don't look at that. They don't see us as being part of their community. And if you don't, then why are you going to talk to them?
People have lost faith in the police, and they've lost faith in what you're doing and why you're doing it,
Mm-hmm.
and they don't believe what you're doing is correct,
Mm-hmm.
then you're just going to be facing more and more opposition every time you go out on patrol.
Yeah.
Because the people who were on your side are now questioning, should they be on your side?
Yeah.
Or if they are defending you, they're now getting a backlash from other people saying, no, why are you defending these racist police officers
Yeah.
who are out there, you know, killing black people and stopping and searching, you know, and inconveniencing people's lives and infringing on their human rights?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, of course.
So then what happens? You then don't defend the police. You may still be pro-police, but you just don't vocalize it. And then slowly, less people talk about it, less people stick up for you, and then it just becomes this piece of shit.
Yeah, and no, you're right. So it's this kind of like systematic issue.
Just get rid of it all and start
All
again.
of it. Start
Just
afresh,
like-
yeah. So
start from
defund the
start.
police, defund public services. Let's put some money on the table and just get a few BAMEs around there and go, you have a slice of that. We need the police to help them. People still need people arresting. People still need, you know, social services still need us to bust through doors in order to conduct welfare checks, whatever it may be, or LFB or, you know, LAS. They all need our help. They all rely on us. So the simple fact of restarting isn't an option. The only thing that can change, and this is my genuine belief, and one of the reasons that I'm here, I guess we're talking about some part of it, is we're bringing technology into it, aren't we?
So we're going to have a robot police force. Then there's no racial biasness. There's no, you know,
Well,
opinions, no stereotypes. We'll just have these robots that just walk around and, you know.
Well, robots, I think is a bit of a stretch over the next 100 years, to be fair. I mean, I'm not saying that it won't happen, but the very basic premise of, you said, you know, robot policing or digital policing, you know, we've got the most amount of data we've ever had, ever, right? And tomorrow we'll have even more, the day after that, month after that, year after that, whatever. This is the pinnacle of data, right? We've never had such access to information, yet we still look at traditional ways, and we've discussed that over the last 50 minutes or so, these traditional ways of some good, mostly bad. Now it's time to change the narrative, and we can't change people, but what we can change is computer systems. But again, we have to be very careful, because you said that don't have biases. Well, if we, people with biases, program the computers, then they will have biases. Because there is no free thinking in computing or machine learning or artificial intelligence. They are only trained to do what we can do until they reach the point of, you know, free thought or free will, which, you know, Terminator and all the rest of it says is not a good thing for us. We need to train them in a very sterile way. So that's where we start. That's the option. That's the answer. The commissioner takes us on board and goes, good points, well made, lovely podcast. Let's see what you can do with your technology. That's where we start. We cannot change these people, but we can change the way that computers influence people, right? In an unbiased way. This is our chance to bring a child into the world, a digital child, right? A digital little baby, which, you know, we call Melinda, don't we? We love her. She's beautiful. She's gorgeous. Amazing brains. No body, but, you know, she'll grow into that. We have a chance of nurturing her and making her a better person than we are. But she helps us, doesn't she? She shows us, well, these are the gaps. This is what you should be targeting. And that's not colour. That's not creed. That's not socioeconomic factors. It just is what it is, based on fact. And if we can train her based on fact, then going forward, we should be able to limit all of the stuff we've talked about. But again, we have to be careful. There is a huge gap that we can be angry against a certain group. You know, me as being part of the BAME background of have been stopped and searched. I can just be targeted. I can go, you know what? I'm going to build Melinda to just target white people. It's our chance now. Black Lives Matter. Black Lives Matter. Right? Let's do this. No. Well, that's not going to help it, is it? Right? We need to start afresh. And that's what we're trying to do, no?
An extra resource for people to use, well, for the Met Police to use, or any police force to use, really.
Yeah,
Which
of course.
means that, you know, you're and it's great in terms of, if you're looking at it from a political standpoint, that you're actively taking steps to reduce and limit biasness as much as possible within your organization, which means that you are staying relevant and keeping up to date with the other organizations out there.
Yeah.
So you don't become this sort of like relic of a system where everybody else is advancing and moving forward, and you're there still, you know, on dial-up internet trying to figure out how to get from A to B.
And we stop the conversation there, and we return back to our scenario. So now you and your colleague, you've managed to catch the group of young men, and you systematically search each member. A crowd is now forming, their camera phones are out filming the whole process. The occasional shouts of police brutality and racist puncturing the air. Each search so far has turned up negative. Your colleague is writing the details down, and pressure is now mounting. Under the camera phones, you can't afford to make a mistake. Your job and reputation is on the line. With the weight of accountability heavy on your shoulders, you search the last guy, the one who caught your eye initially. You can feel your heartbeat increasing, and yes, there in the waistband you found something. The crowd becomes louder, and a sigh of relief escapes you as you pull out a knife, quickly passing it to your colleague for evidence. One less weapon on the street, one less casualty. But is it? 3 other people in the group were searched with a negative result. The video images will circulate through communities, but how many views will they get, and would the story become distorted over time? So what is the public perception now? Statistically representative of the current stop and search figures. Would you consider this good proactive policing? Was there enough evidence to even stop? And what would you have done? Throughout the podcast, we have given you an insight into policing. We invite you to connect with us and join in with the stop and search discussion. Thank you for listening, and please follow us on social media for updates. This podcast was brought to you by the team at Rootaware.